How much does the rarity of a certain ancient coin affect its market price? This aspiration of owning something rare, something very few people, or even better, only you have, is one of the most fascinating behavioral patterns I see on collectors. And this hunt for rarity manifests itself in different ways depending on what kind of collection we are talking about. I think modern coin collectors have an easier time coming to a consensus as to what constitutes a rare piece. If you collect coins by date, there will be a certain key date with lower mintages that are sought after. If someone is assembling a typeset, they have certain denominations that are harder to get. If someone only collects high-grade coins, there are certain types that are very rare to be found in high grade. And then, depending on how popular that niche of collecting is, the good old mechanics of supply and demand come into play, and an average price for a coin is established by the market. The same principles of supply and demand affect ancient coins, but the variables that affect the supply and demand side of things are a little bit different. In a way, they are more abstract. Maybe abstract is not the right word. Nuanced might be best. These variables certainly exist. As you acquire knowledge and experience, you will develop an eye for when a coin is above or below its market average. And as you become really knowledgeable, you will understand why certain coins might be desirable or not. But it can be very counterintuitive at first. You might find an ugly coin of an emperor you never heard of selling for multiples of a nice-looking coin from a legendary historical character. You might be looking through a series of coins of, let's say, a certain Roman emperor, and seemingly out of nothing, one of the coins, for some reason, is worth a lot more. And sometimes you might come across a super rare coin, maybe unique, maybe an unpublished coin that escaped hundreds of years of numismatic research and cataloging, and they might cost $20. Let me try to explain the basics to you through some examples. I'm going to do this mostly through examples of particular coins exactly because it is all very nuanced. Instead of just saying, here is variable X, it affects the market price in X way, this is variable Y, it affects it at Y way, and so on, we're going to discuss a whole bunch of different coins and chat about their unique little quirks that might make them rare, common, relevant, irrelevant, expensive or cheap. Hopefully, after listening to these individual tales of each coin, you might be able to assemble the beginning of a mental map of how rarity truly manifests itself in the ancient coin market. I won't be giving you precise values here, that would make the video unnecessarily long, and I already have an episode on how to research the price of ancient coins. I'll leave a link down in the description if you want to see this later. And the point is, I want you to always keep in mind a question. And that question is, who cares? No, seriously, take a very good look at the coin and ask, who cares about owning this coin and having it in their collection? Why, for example, anything related to Julius Caesar is immediately more expensive than other late Republican coins? Most of these coins are actually not rare. One of the main reasons coins were issued was to pay for troops, and, well, Caesar fought a lot of wars and issued a lot of coins. Well, of course, these coins have historical relevance. He's the most famous Roman to ever live. This is today's first variable, historical relevance. The overwhelming majority of ancient coin collectors have a love for history, so the stronger a coin's connection is to a historical event or character that people care about, see once more that who cares factor, the more demand there will be. And in the case of Caesar, even with his coins being common, there will always be a strong demand for his coins. Some coins might present themselves as a more affordable alternative. His denarii, for example, struck during his campaigns in North Africa come to mind. Basically, those are not related to his most famous events, life events, such as, for example, the elephant denarius issued during the Roman Civil War. That's super popular. Or the famous denarius bearing his portrait, the first living Roman to dare put his portrait on a coin. These are always very sought after because people care. It's like if there were mitigating or empowering factors that might make a coin more or less desirable, depending on how strong its connection to Caesar is. Inside this mini niche of very desirable Julius Caesar coin, which all of them are. So an example of some mitigating factors. The coin might also have too much wear or a weak strike right at the part where Caesar is written, which could be a turnoff for a lot of people. Or a coin bearing his portrait might be a posthumous issue rather than a lifetime, meaning it was made after his assassination, which detracts a bit from its cool factor. There's something about a coin issued during a character's lifetime that collectors enjoy a lot. You might come across a situation where a visually superior posthumous coin will not be nearly as expensive as a visually inferior but lifetime coin. As I said, it's a case-by-case analysis of an individual coin. Its potential to generate desire on a collector, and that will determine how many people care about it, and this of course will influence its degree of rarity and desirability. Another very common example, the silver drachma and tetradrachma issued in the name of Alexander the Great. These coins are incredibly common. It's an interesting case of a coin with a lot of historical relevance. It's Alexander the Great, for God's sake. However, the supply is so massive that most collectors can realistically get one or two of his coins. The grade of conservation of the coin and the style will play a big factor on the price, but if you just want a coin of Alexander, if you're more of an academic collector, getting one will not be an issue at all. That is, unless you want a lifetime coin. Alexander died young and all of a sudden, right? At the high point of his power, and the design on his coins was very prestigious. So this design kept being used on coins of his successors. Actually, they kept being imitated for centuries. This means that the majority of coins you find of Alexander are posthumous coins. These are perfectly fine, of course, they're perfectly fine historical artifacts, but maybe you are one of these people who really care about having a coin that was issued using silver from Alexander's plunder of the Persian Empire, a coin that was contemporary with the man. That might be the key component, the magical twist that makes you collect these coins in the first place. If you do, if you need your coin to be imbued with this historical significance, well, you're gonna have to pay the extra because a lot of other collectors have had the same idea as you. And as a result, it's not that lifetime coins are rare, but they are more in the scarce side. But their demand is much higher than if you were simply looking for a coin of the type of Alexander, so get ready to pay. And this week's episode is kindly sponsored by L5, the new online marketplace for ancient coins. L5 is a platform that focuses on trust, transparency, and low fees. It is an environment where you can safely buy coins to add to your collection, knowing every item listed has been vetted by specialists, with a lifetime guarantee of authenticity, and the new system of online bidding that ensures fair, transparent bidding. No sniping, no shield bids, just a fair trading environment for buyers and sellers. L5's proposal is to eliminate all uncertainties beginners and experienced collectors alike might have when buying a coin, while offering a low-cost service with no listing fees and a buyer's premium of just 5%. Make sure to check out L5.com for what I believe is a new platform that the ancient coin market was in need for. Other types of common coins that always command strong prices: Alexander's gold staters, anything from Emperor Augustus, especially if issued in precious metals. Wow, the increase in price for any denarius of Augustus has been astronomical lately. Even for common types. In fact, most of Augustus coins are common. I've been trying to find a pretty example of the Gaius and Lucius denarius of him, probably the most common of his coins, and I just, for the last 5 or 6 months, I just couldn't make myself pay the current asking prices. It felt like I was giving out one of my kidneys for it. Anything related to, I don't know, like the stories of the Bible as well, that's another niche with common coins that end up being expensive due to its historical significance and the demand it brings. Oh, of course, the Athenian tetradrachma, probably the most famous ancient coin ever. The Athenian owls were issued in the tens or maybe hundreds of millions. Lots of them are available. It seems like recent hordes have hit the market as well, increasing the supply, but it always surprises me how the market seems to have an endless appetite for this coin. Maybe its price has dropped a bit if compared to 10, 20 years ago, especially if you factor in inflation, but it's always a coin in strong demand and good prices at auction. Why? Well, because once more, people care about these. The rise in popularity of these famous types is actually a pretty good indicator that the hobby is strong and is attracting new collectors, because that's the kind of coin beginners will go to, and it's beginners who generally don't understand a lot about the prices of ancient coins, and they end up paying those eye-watering prices you see at heritage auctions, for example. So on one end, it can be a little bit frustrating that popular coins are so expensive. On the other hand, it's good to know that the hobby is thriving. It's probably also worth mentioning maybe an example of a coin with a very restricted supply and strong demand. Maybe not as strong as the previous ones, but definitely strong. The coins issued by Empress Zenobia of the separatist Palmyrene Empire in the 3rd century AD. I'm putting up on the screen now a picture of an Antoninianus of her that hammered for 5,500 euros in late 2024. That's the hammer price. You need to account for the buyer's premium on top of that. This is one of the situations where a beginner might not understand what's the appeal of this coin. At first glance, it's a rather ugly, unrealistic portrait in this coin. The piece itself is not in such great shape. The reverse is kind of rough. The coin is small, dull, and lightweight for the time. It just weighs like 2 grams, but it's Zenobia. She's not mainstream, but if you start delving a bit into Roman imperial history, you know she was a very important usurper at a critical moment of the empire's history. A point the empire could have collapsed. A fact that a woman held executive power as an empress in a male-dominated world also gives this coin a huge boost in its who cares factor. Sadly, as most usurpers, when Emperor Aurelian deposed her, he made a pretty good job of getting rid of her coins, so they are incredibly rare today. In this case, the demand is relatively niche, but it is a large niche amongst Roman imperial collectors who have a fiery desire for this coin, and supply is almost non-existent. That's why you get those crazy prices for a little lump of bronze. This case of Zenobia is a good bridge for us to look into another segment where rarity can be translated into higher prices, and that would be what I call bubbles of interest. As you move from this more superficial view of the market and the more popular types that everyone loves, and you delve deeper into ancient numismatics, certain niches will have bubbles of interest. Areas where there's a focus of collectors that are already initiates to the hobby, and they might flock up to certain types of coins that are not obvious at first. That's where you might find coins that are incomprehensibly expensive at first sight. Here's a cool example. This is a Byzantine phallus of Emperor Justinian. A lot of collectors ignore Byzantine coins entirely. They just think they're super ugly. But there's a dedicated body of collectors who love these coins. The majority of phallus are common and affordable, but this one recently sold at auction for 2,500 euros. Let's keep in mind the comparable phallus of Justinian from a common mint like Constantinople shouldn't be more than, 50 euros at most in very good shape. Here's something funny, right? I think it might be the case where the affordability of the average Byzantine bronze might have created a community of collectors simply because they are affordable, they're easy to get into. And as people start collecting them, falling in love for the historical period with the whole history of the Eastern Roman Empire, as they start researching their coin and then realize there are lots of other mints that issued folis, they inevitably flock to these less common coins because, well, everyone has a folis of Cyzicus, of Constantinople, of Antioch. The problem is, some mints are super rare, like this one. This coin was issued in Ravenna in the Italian peninsula. This makes this coin highly interesting for Byzantine collectors because now you have a coin not only from a rare mint, but a coin that is connected to one of Justinian's main feats, the reconquest of Italy in his attempt to restore the Western Roman Empire. So it connects to like other interesting characters like Belisarius, the fight between the early Byzantine Empire and the barbarians. The coin takes an entire new coolness perspective. And once again, if you ask who cares, the answer is actually quite a few people care. By the way, that's a good opportunity for today's question. I want you to leave a comment below telling us what kinds of specific types of coins you enjoy collecting. Do you have like a special emperor whose coins you really enjoy? Did you ever overpay for one of his coins? Maybe, I don't know, like a special Greek coin type you collect? Let us know. And of course, remember to leave a like in this video if you're enjoying it. It really helps the channel. What other examples of bubbles of interest I might give you? Well, Probus and Gallienus might be good examples. Both are lesser known emperors from the 3rd century with relatively short reigns. Well, Gallienus had a reasonably long one. Their coins are incredibly common. For those of you who pick as one of their collecting objectives to have one coin of each emperor, you can get pretty good examples of these two emperors for, I don't know, like 40 euros, something like that. But most people just buy one of these coins and just move on to the next emperor, the next more interesting character, without giving these guys much thought. But the very fact these coins are so common, so diverse and affordable, that's exactly why they end up developing their bubbles of interest. We don't know the reason, but Probus, for example, has a wonderful coinage with lots of different portraits. In some he's wearing armor, in others like consular robes, mythological clothing. They come in different styles from different mints, and he has his very dedicated fan base. Well, I'm one of these people, I collect Probus coins. So you might see a Probus with a slightly different bust type, or maybe a different denomination like Aquinarius, and you think to yourself, that's just another Probus, what's to it? And there might be 15 people at the next auction bidding up that unassuming coin that you just thought was something not very important to absurd price tags. Once again, it's that key question. Who cares? If 7 or 8 Probus fans care and they coincide at an auction, that's the perfect recipe for perceived rarity and some pretty scary hammer prices at that auction. The same goes for Gallienus. You could fill a truck with his coins, and you could fill an even larger truck with the people who don't care about his coins. But the Gallienus fans exist out there, and they are willing to spend some serious money on his coins. As an example, this Gallienus I'm showing you with a consular bust, very rare, sold recently for 460 euros, plus buyer's premium of 18%. Now, you might consider this a low price considered to the 5,200 euros for that Justinian, the first I was talking about, but if we keep in mind that the vast majority of his coins cost 20 to 40 euros in mint state condition, then you have an idea of the significance this coin has in this small but very passionate circle of collectors. Bubbles of interest might also be geographic in nature. For example, another type of Roman coin that generally is very affordable. Bronzes of the Constantinian dynasty. Usually these are beginner coins, super affordable, unless we're talking about coins made at the Londinium mint. Londinium is, of course, the modern city of London. The English numismatic market is one of the oldest in the world. There's a significant number of British collectors of ancient coins, and for a time, the island had an imperial mint during the Roman period, particularly during the time Constantine and his family were issuing coins there. So an otherwise affordable and common type of coin has a very passionate number of collectors that specialize in this particular mint because of its geographic location, making the pieces from this mint much more expensive on average compared to other mints, even important mints like Rome, the capital. Let's keep going. This time I'm going to the supply side of the supply and demand dynamic. It turns out that due to certain, how may I put it, anomalies, random strokes of fate, I may say, certain types of popular coins or coins that are part of very popular sets for ancient collectors that should have been common end up being very rare, which makes them equivalent to key dates, well, in this case, key coins for a set, and their prices skyrocket. Let me illustrate this with the first example that comes to my head, the denarii of Emperor Claudius. Many collectors have read The Life of the 12 Caesars by Suetonius, so a set of these 12 characters is a common goal for a lot of people. The Julio-Claudian dynasty is also a very popular, smaller subset. That would be that every emperor from Augustus all the way to Nero. Well, these people are up for a very nasty surprise if they want to make the set in precious metals, and Claudius is to blame. His coins are, for some reason, absurdly rare, and a denarius of him can easily cost like 4,000 or 5,000 euros, while a denarius of Augustus can be had for 400. This one you have on your screen hammered last year for 32,000 Swiss francs. Absurd. But that's just the reality of things. His coins are super rare and we aren't 100% sure why. There are some theories that might explain it. I mean, Nero, his successor, reduced the fineness and the weight of the denarius, so it might have been the case that lots of Claudius's coins were withdrawn and restruck as lightweight Nero coins, which could explain the small number of his denarii. Some other also theorize Claudius just didn't issue a whole lot of coins to begin with, as the number of denarii and auri in circulation might have been considered adequate for the time. You can always find a nice bronze of Claudius to fill the spot of the emperor, or go with some provincial coin like I did, but if you want imperial silver, prepare yourself for a massive hit to your bank account. The same goes for characters like Caligula, but the dynamics that make his precious metal coins expensive are a little bit different. It's more of a mix of factors. First, of course, he is incredibly popular, the crazy Caligula. It's another first coin that many beginners aspire to buy, so it's always on high demand, meaning that component of historical factor and who cares comes into effect. Also, Caligula suffered a damnatio memoriae after his death. This was a damnation of his memory, in which his name was erased from public records, from monuments, and his coins were also withdrawn and melted down, to really make sure his memory was erased from the public eye. This means the coins that have survived to our days were the few ones that were hoarded at the time he was emperor, which are very few in number. Now that I'm thinking about this, before the recent Gladiator 2 movie was released, they revealed it would take place during the reign of Caracalla and Geta. The coins from these two are very common, and I'm wondering if there were any collectors or dealers out there who loaded up on their coins, expecting the movie to be a blockbuster, leading to a spike of interest on Roman coins, and there they would be ready to unload their investment for a very healthy profit from beginner collectors, only for the movie to be a complete flop, and now they're left with a whole bunch of denarii they won't ever sell. Well, there's a silver lining to everything. They could start a beautiful collection of the Severan dynasty out of this failed attempt of this speculation. Another variable that reduces supply considerably for a certain type of coin is what I would call temporal bottlenecks. And what I mean by this is, for example, particular emperors with very short reigns that ended up being part of common sets collected by lots of people. Think about emperors from the 3rd century, such as Hostilian, Emilian, Florian. Some of these people reigned for like months. Even more famous ones like Titus or Nerva. They also didn't reign for very long, but they're very popular and part of important and common sets. So it's just that they simply didn't have the time to strike lots of coins. And for example, if you want one coin from every emperor, that's a very popular type of collection. You know that every once in a while you will get a significant monetary hit if you need to have that particularly rare emperor. There's also the issue of coins that were made right at the beginning or the end of a famous series. These also tend to be rare and expensive. So for example, since I mentioned Athenian tetradrachma before, these coins were issued for hundreds of years, and the most common ones are those issued around the middle of that time period. The very first Athenian owls, those made in the archaic period, are definitely the most expensive owls out there. So if you want a full typeset of Athenian owls from every single time period and every major version, there is your key piece for the set and the one you're going to spend the most money on. Commemorative coins, or coins issued during very specific historical events, also generate a lot of interest. People care about them because of their connection to a historical event, but their very small issue numbers make them demanded and rare, a perfect recipe for perceived rarity and high prices. Coins like, like the most obvious example are those commemorating the 1000th anniversary of Rome, struck under Philip the Arab. These are much more expensive on average than a normal silver coin of him, which is actually one of the cheapest Roman silver coins you can buy as a beginner. There were even smaller commemorative issues by the Romans, coins like Trajan's denarii celebrating his wife Plotina and his sister Marciana. These were made in very small numbers. They might even have been gifts, donatives to members of the Roman elite, so they become very desirable and very expensive. Or maybe coins mentioning highly specific events, like the deification, for example, of Emperor Hadrian. Normally, posthumous coins are actually quite common, but since the Senate hated Hadrian so much and only deified him due to the insistence of his successor, they ensured the number of coins celebrating the event was as small as possible. They really didn't want to see that man's face and their money. And as a result, it's an interesting coin that might drive some attention to itself, but it's rare. Another great example, the coins issued at Olympia, the place where the ancient Olympics were held. That's another example of such scarcity. Every 4 years, new designs would be created for the coins of the city. And as people from all corners of the Greek world flocked into the city for the games, they were expected to exchange their money for local Olympian coins. This was a source of income to the city, and most likely these coins were taken home as souvenirs by those who attended the games. With the designs changing every 4 years, with the rarity inherent of these coins, the city that issued them wasn't particularly large, so there wasn't a lot of coins issued in the first place. That means that the high demand for a coin collected to the ancient Olympics and its obvious temporal bottleneck ensures that any coins related to Olympia are always expensive when they show up at auction. It's pretty obvious. Next, maybe a fairly obvious one. Coins in high grade and made out of dies of fine style. A high grade coin will always be a thing of beauty, or a coin coming from a die made by a particularly talented engraver. These will always make you stop and look at them for a second. But a coin's job wasn't to be looked at. It was meant to circulate. It was to be worn from exchanging hands over and over and over. So it's just natural that truly mint state coins are rare. These coins are undeniably beautiful and they will always attract collectors. They will make people care. If you've been collecting coins for a while, you know that feeling of a pretty coin that is completely out of your niche, but you just really like it. And the temptation of buying it just for its aesthetic reasons can sometimes be a little bit too strong to resist. That's how I ended up with a sizable Hellenistic collection despite being primarily a Roman collector. These damn things are just too pretty. People coming from US coin collecting who are used to slabs are particularly vulnerable to this kind of rarity derived from high grades. Conservation is a really big thing for modern coin collectors. So there are even people who don't collect ancients and they just want maybe one coin to scratch their itch of having something really old. And since these people are used to slabs and the grading system, they will drop as much money as needed without thinking much about the price. They just care about that 5 out of 5 star mint state blah 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 that it says on the label. It's a bit of a shame in a way because there's much more to ancient coins than just beauty, although they are indeed very pretty. But I can tell I can't claim a moral high ground here because I too have been seduced by a pretty shiny coin that I didn't need and ended up paying more than I was comfortable with, simply for the exclusivity of owning something that went from the mint straight into a jar and stayed there for 2,000 years. Next, doing a complete 180 degrees from the purely visual appeal of mint state coins, let me talk about the rarity of a coin with provenance and plate coins. In this case, the coin's condition, its style, or even the design on it are a little bit irrelevant. What matters is who owned the coin, in which past sale it was sold at, and if it was used at a catalog or publication as an illustration of a coin type. Ancient coins have had two lives, one back in antiquity when they were money, and the second life after resurfacing in our modern world. A second life as a collectible and an object of historical study. Some coins have been exchanging hands, being collections of politicians, famous collectors, researchers, even museums. For centuries they've been changing hands before coming to our possession, and collectors enjoy this, the history of the coin, a lot. Not all coins have a provenance. Normally people didn't care a lot about recording that information unless the coin was very valuable or was part of the collection of someone really prestigious. But this is changing nowadays, especially as new digital ways of keeping track of past auctions become more common. There's also the added benefit of knowing your coin has been through the hands of other collectors. So that's yet another pair of eyes evaluating the coin for its authenticity. This new importance given to provenance gives certain coins a new dimension of rarity to them. As I said, not only for the coin itself as a historical and art object, but for its trajectory in the numismatic community. A piece being a plate coin is another side of provenance that gives it value. It probably doesn't come as a surprise to you that in order to do research on coins and publish articles or catalogs, a researcher needs to handle a lot of coins. Duh. And they also need to illustrate what they're talking about in their publications. So what typically happens when you get a book on coins, let's say a book about Roman coins, there will be its normal pages with written stuff about a coin issue, and as you read a passage about a coin, there will be some type of reference or number, something like refer to plate number X. This is a clue that you should be reading that article while also looking at the pictures of the coin at the referenced page. This is used to illustrate the written part. That's where the name plate coin comes from. This also happens on older auction catalogs. A plate coin is imbued with a certain prestige to it. It means some very knowledgeable researcher on coins used that coin as an example of what the type should look like. And owning a plate coin, it's kind of like an honor for that coin, for its collector. You own a coin used as a reference for all the other coins of that same type. There's a bit of an ego thing there for sure, but in practical terms, it is also another very strong proof of authenticity. After all, a researcher trusted that coin enough as to put an image of it on his or her book. If this coin turned out to be a fake, it would undermine their credibility, so they generally make sure it's an authentic coin. Plate coins are, however, rare. There must be a lot of plate coins around where its owners don't have any idea that theirs is a plate coin, but once these are properly identified, that increases the value of the coin considerably, because in a way it makes the coin unique. And there we have it. There are certainly other aspects of a coin that might make it rare in any way that makes it more valuable, but I think these examples can give you an idea of how rarity affects a coin's price. If you have any suggestions, absolutely feel free to tell us in the comment section below what you think of this rarity topic. But yeah, I think the examples we've seen today are enough for you to understand how rarity manifests itself in the ancient coin market. I hope you learned something new today. If you did, please make sure to leave your like and subscribe. Also consider becoming a channel member or a Patreon to support my work. Happy collecting, and I'll see you soon. Let me give a special thank you to all of my amazing channel members and Patreons for their generous support. This channel would not be the same without your help. And if you would like to be part of this list, have early access to my videos when they are uploaded to YouTube, and a series of other perks, make sure to check out my Patreon page and my members tab on YouTube. Thank you very much.